Billionaire daughter fell in love with her poor classmate. What happens next shocked everyone. If you ever walk through the grand iron gates of the Kingsley estate, you would know that wealth has a way of announcing itself. The sprawling mansion, nestled in the heart of Beverly Hills, was a fortress of luxury, marble floors that gleamed under golden chandeliers, velvet drapes that cascaded down from impossibly high ceilings, and a fleet of luxury cars parked like silent sentinels outside. It was the kind of wealth most people could only dream of. And at the heart of it all was Isabella Kingsley, the only daughter of billionaire real estate mogul, Victor Kingsley. She had everything a girl could ever want: designer clothes, private jets, and an elite education at Westwood Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. But what she didn't have was freedom. Her life had always been meticulously planned out, every step dictated by her father's expectations. She was to graduate top of her class, attend an Ivy League university, and eventually marry someone from a family just as powerful as theirs. Love, at least the kind that came without a price tag, was never part of the plan. But fate, as it often does, had other ideas. The boy who changed everything at Westwood Academy, where students arrived in chauffeur-driven cars and wore custom-tailored uniforms, Noah Carter, was an anomaly. Unlike his classmates, he didn't come from money. In fact, he was there on a full scholarship, the son of a struggling single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Noah never cared about the wealth that surrounded him. He had bigger dreams, of becoming an architect, of designing homes for people who could never afford mansions like the Kingsleys. He kept his head down, studied hard, and avoided unnecessary attention. Until Isabella. She first noticed him in the school library, his head buried in a sketchbook, lost in a world of blueprints and ideas. Unlike the other boys who flaunted their family names like badges of honor, Noah was different. He was kind, thoughtful, and completely uninterested in the shallow world of privilege. For Isabella, who had spent her whole life surrounded by people who wanted something from her, Noah's indifference was intriguing. And then, one day, fate pushed them together. It was a rainy afternoon when Isabella found herself stranded outside the school gates. Her driver was late, an unusual occurrence that left her standing in the downpour, utterly helpless. That's when Noah appeared, his old hoodie soaked through, offering her his umbrella without hesitation. "You'll get wet," she protested. He simply shrugged. "I don't mind." It was a small moment, insignificant to anyone else. But to Isabella, it was the first time someone had done something for her without expecting anything in return. That was how it began. A friendship that turned into something neither of them expected. The unforgivable love, but love in their world was never simple. When whispers of Isabella and Noah's growing closeness reached Victor Kingsley, he didn't just disapprove, he was furious. A billionaire's daughter falling for a poor boy. It was unacceptable, disgraceful even. One evening, as Isabella stepped into her father's office, she found him seated behind his massive mahogany desk, his piercing gaze colder than ever. "You will end this," he said, his voice controlled but laced with warning. She swallowed hard. "I love him." Victor Kingsley leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Then you'll learn the hard way that love is not enough. What happened next would change everything." Isabella had always known that her father was a man of power. But until that moment, standing in his cold, dimly lit office, facing his unyielding stare, she had never truly understood the depth of his control. The Kingsley name wasn't just about wealth, it was a legacy, built on generations of business empires, strategic alliances, and unshakable influence. And in Victor Kingsley's world, love was a transaction, a carefully negotiated deal between families of equal status. But what Isabella felt for Noah wasn't something that could be measured in assets or stock portfolios. It was real, uncalculated, and, for the first time in her life, entirely her choice. Her father's words still echoed in her mind. You will end this. But could she? A love that shouldn't exist. Noah wasn't blind to the world Isabella came from. From the moment they started spending time together, he knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. He had seen the way her friends looked at him, the raised eyebrows, the whispered conversations behind manicured hands. He didn't belong in their circles, and they made sure he knew it. But Isabella was different. She didn't care that he didn't drive a luxury car or wear designer clothes. She didn't care that he had to work part-time at a bookstore to help his mother pay the bills. With her, he felt seen, not as the poor scholarship kid, but as himself. And that scared him. Because deep down, Noah knew that people like him didn't end up with people like Isabella. Her world was built on expectations, and sooner or later, the weight of it would crush them. Still, he couldn't walk away. Not when she looked at him the way she did. Not when every conversation, every stolen moment between them felt like something out of a story neither of them deserved but both desperately wanted to believe in. The weight of expectation, the whispers soon turned into full-blown rumors. At school, Isabella's so-called friends cornered her in the hallway. Are you seriously dating him? One of them scoffed, flipping her sleek, blonde hair. Is this, like, some kind of charity project? Isabella's jaw tightened. Noah is my friend. Her best friend, Lila, sighed dramatically. Bella, be serious. Your dad is going to lose his mind. You have a future to think about. Noah. He's temporary. Temporary. The word stung more than Isabella wanted to admit. Because wasn't that the reality of it? Noah had no place in her father's meticulously planned vision for her future. He wasn't a hedge fund heir or the son of a foreign diplomat. He was just a boy with dreams too big for his circumstances. But love didn't come with terms and conditions. She thought about the late-night conversations in Noah's small, cozy apartment, the way he spoke about architecture with so much passion, the quiet strength in his eyes whenever he talked about taking care of his mother. Noah wasn't temporary. He was real. And that was exactly why her father would do everything in his power to destroy what they had. The warning that evening, as Isabella sat at the massive dining table of the Kingsley estate, her father barely acknowledged her presence. He was focused on his meal, his movements precise, calculated. Her mother, always the silent observer, sat with perfect posture, her expression unreadable. Finally, Victor Kingsley set down his fork and knife, dabbing his lips with a linen napkin before speaking. I had a meeting today, he said, his voice deceptively calm. With the board of directors? Isabella swallowed. She knew this wasn't just casual conversation. They're eager for me to finalize our partnership with the Holloways, he continued. Their son, Daniel, is quite accomplished. He'll be attending Harvard next year. His family is expecting an introduction soon. Isabella's stomach twisted. She knew exactly what he was doing. I'm not interested in Daniel Holloway, she said carefully. Her father's gaze flickered to her, sharp and assessing. You're not interested in making wise choices, apparently. A tense silence stretched between them. Then, his voice dropped lower. You will stop seeing that boy. A chill ran down her spine. He wasn't making a request. He was issuing an order. I can't do that, she whispered. For the first time, her mother spoke. Isabella, your father is only thinking of your future. My future, Isabella said, gripping the edge of the table, should be mine to decide. Victor Kingsley leaned back, studying her like a chess piece he was about to move into checkmate. Then, in the same calm voice, he delivered his final blow. If you continue this mistake, I will make sure that boy's future disappears. Her breath caught. He wasn't just threatening to cut her off. He was threatening Noah. And just like that, Isabella realized the full extent of her father's power. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was war. Isabella lay awake that night, staring at the crystal chandelier hanging above her bed. Her father's threat echoed in her mind. I will make sure that boy's future disappears. She knew exactly what that meant. Victor Kingsley didn't just throw around empty warnings. When he wanted something gone, it vanished. Companies, careers, even people. He had the money, the influence, and the power to erase someone's opportunities with a single phone call. She had to warn Noah. The first blow the next morning, she found him in the school courtyard, sitting under the old oak tree where they often met. His sketchbook was open, lines of unfinished blueprints stretching across the page. But today, his face was tense, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something unreadable. Noah, she started, out of breath from running. I need to talk to you, he cut her off. Did you know? She froze. Know what? He let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through his dark hair. I just got an email from Westwood's financial office. My scholarship is under review. Someone filed a complaint questioning whether I still qualify. Her blood ran cold. Victor Kingsley didn't waste time. Noah, I swear, he shook his head, his jaw clenched. I knew this would happen. The moment we got close, I knew I was a problem that needed to be dealt with. His words stung. Don't say that, she whispered. You're not a problem, Noah. My father is just, your father, he said bitterly, is trying to ruin my life. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Noah, please, she begged. Let's figure this out together. He exhaled, looking up at the sky as if searching for answers. Isabella, be honest with me. Do you really think we can win against him? She didn't know how to answer. Because right now, it felt like they were already losing. A dangerous offer later that evening, Isabella found herself pacing in the Kingsley estate's vast living room, her mind racing. She needed to do something before her father destroyed Noah's future. As if on cue, her mother entered, dressed in an elegant silk robe, her expression calm but knowing. I assume you heard what your father did, she said smoothly. Isabella turned, anger bubbling inside her. He's ruining Noah's life just because he doesn't approve of him. Her mother sighed and sat gracefully on the velvet sofa. No, darling. He's protecting you. From what? Happiness. Isabella snapped. From a mistake, her mother corrected. I know you believe this is love, but love isn't enough. Not in this world. Do you really think Noah can give you the life you were meant for? Isabella's hands curled into fists. I don't care about that. Her mother studied her for a long moment. Then, she reached into the side table and pulled out an envelope. She placed it on the coffee table between them. What is that? Isabella asked, eyeing it suspiciously. A way out, her mother said. A deal. She hesitated before picking up the envelope. When she opened it, her heart sank. Inside was a check. A blank check. She looked up, horrified. You want me to pay Noah to leave me? Her mother sighed. I want you to think about what's best for both of you. Your father won't stop, Isabella. He'll keep coming at Noah until he has nothing left. But if you end this on your terms, you can save him from that. Isabella felt sick. You're asking me to buy my way out of love, she whispered. Her mother stood, smoothing the fabric of her robe. I'm asking you to be smart. You have until tomorrow. And with that, she walked away, leaving Isabella alone with a choice that felt impossible. Isabella sat frozen on the couch, the blank check in her hands feeling heavier than any weight she had ever carried. The ink on the paper was crisp, untouched, yet the meaning behind it was suffocating. Her father wasn't just trying to separate them, He was trying to erase Noah completely. Could she really buy his silence? Would he even take the money? Deep down, she already knew the answer. Noah wasn't the type of person who could be bought. But if she didn't do something soon, her father would destroy him anyway. That night, she barely slept. By morning, she had made up her mind. She wasn't going to let Noah suffer for loving her. But breaking his heart might be the only way to save him. The breakup that wasn't real at school. Isabella found Noah in the art studio, sitting alone at one of the drafting tables. His sketchbook was open, but he wasn't drawing. The dark circles under his eyes told her he hadn't slept either. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to look cold. "We need to talk," she said. Noah glanced up, something flickering in his gaze. "I already know what you're going to say." She stiffened. "You do?" He gave a sad smile. "Your father made sure I got the message loud and clear." Her throat tightened. "Noah, he's going to ruin my future if I don't stay away from you, isn't he?" he asked quietly. She hesitated before nodding. A long silence stretched between them before Noah sighed. "So, this is it." She wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to scream that she loved him, that she would fight for them no matter what. But if she did, her father would come after him harder. So instead, she hardened her voice. "Yes." Noah studied her for a long moment, as if searching for something in her eyes. Then, he did something she didn't expect. He took her hands. "If this is what you want," he said softly, "then I won't fight it." She bit the inside of her cheek to keep from breaking down. "It's for the best." Noah exhaled slowly, his grip on her hands tightening for just a second before he let go. "I hope that's true," he murmured. Then, he walked away. And Isabella felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. But it wasn't over yet. She thought her father would be satisfied, but she was wrong. That night, she overheard a phone call from his office. "Make sure the boy has no options left," her father was saying. "I don't want him in this city by the end of the semester." Panic shot through her. Ending things wasn't enough, her father was trying to make Noah disappear. And now, she had no choice. She had to fight back. Isabella's hands trembled as she pressed herself against the hallway wall, listening to her father's conversation. "Make sure the boy has no options left." The words echoed in her mind, sharp as knives. Her father wasn't just forcing Noah out of her life, he was destroying his entire future. She had to act fast. A desperate plan. That night, Isabella called Noah. He didn't answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. What if her father had already made his move? Throwing on a jacket, she grabbed her car keys and drove straight to his apartment. The tiny complex was a world away from the lavish estate she called home. As she stepped out of the car, the biting wind cut through her sweater, but she barely noticed. She knocked urgently on his door. A moment later, it opened. Noah stood there, his eyes filled with exhaustion and something else, resignation. "Easy," he murmured, surprised. "What are you doing here?" She pushed past him, her heart racing. "We don't have time. My father is trying to destroy you. He's pulling strings to make sure you lose everything, your scholarship, your future, even your home." Noah's expression darkened. "I figured as much." Isabella grabbed his hands. "You have to leave. Tonight." His jaw clenched. "And run. Let him win." She shook her head, desperation leaking into her voice. "No, Noah. We fight, but we fight smart. If you disappear on your own terms, he won't be able to control what happens next." He studied her, searching for the truth in her eyes. Then, something shifted in his gaze. "You have a plan, don't you?" She swallowed hard. I think I do. The risk that changed everything. The next morning, Isabella walked into her father's office, this time, with her head held high. I know what you did, she said coldly. Victor Kingsley barely looked up from his paperwork. You have to be more specific, darling. Her fingers curled into fist. You went after Noah. But it's not going to work. For the first time, he met her gaze. Amusement flickered in his eyes. And why is that? She took a deep breath and said the words that could change everything. Because if you don't back off, I'll go public. I'll tell the world how you manipulate businesses, crush people who don't fit your agenda, and use your wealth to control everything, including your own daughter. His expression hardened. You wouldn't dare. She lifted her phone, showing him the recording app running. Try me. For the first time in her life, Isabella saw something rare in her father's eyes. Uncertainty. The war had truly begun. Victor Kingsley's cold stare bore into Isabella like a sharpened dagger. For the first time in her life, she saw something unfamiliar in her father's expression, not just anger, but a flicker of doubt. She had never dared to challenge him this way before. He slowly rose from his leather chair, smoothing out the cuffs of his tailored suit, his movements deliberate, controlled. The silence between them stretched unbearably before he finally spoke. You think you can threaten me, Isabella? His voice was dangerously calm. Your own father. She tightened her grip on her phone, refusing to show fear. I don't want to threaten you, Dad. But I won't let you ruin Noah's life just because he isn't good enough for me. His eyes darkened. You don't understand the world you live in. You think love is enough? That boy has nothing, Isabella. Nothing. And you would throw away everything for him. She stood taller. I'd rather have nothing with Noah than have everything and feel empty inside. Victor's lips curled in a smirk. Brave words. But let's see how brave you really are. Before she could react, he pressed a button on his desk. A few seconds later, the office door opened, and a man in a black suit stepped inside. Isabella recognized him immediately, Mr. Donovan, her father's most trusted fixer. The man who made problems disappear. Her heart pounded. Victor turned to him. Make sure the boy understands. He is not welcome here. Not in this school. Not in this city. Donovan nodded once and exited without another word. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. What does that mean? She demanded. What are you going to do? Her father leaned back against his desk, watching her. Let's just say by tomorrow morning, Noah's life will be unrecognizable. Something inside her snapped. You can't do this, she hissed. I won't let you. Her father chuckled. And what are you going to do about it, Isabella? She met his gaze, determination burning through her. Watch me. A race against time. Isabella ran out of the house, her mind spinning. She needed to get to Noah before Donovan did. She dialed his number over and over as she sped down the highway, but he wasn't answering. By the time she reached his apartment, dread coiled in her stomach. The door was open. She rushed inside. Noah. The apartment was in disarray, papers scattered, furniture overturned. It looked like someone had searched through everything. Then she saw him. Noah was sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch, holding his jaw. There was a cut on his lip, and his knuckles were bruised. Oh my God, Isabella whispered, rushing to him. She cupped his face, her eyes filling with tears. What happened? He let out a bitter laugh. Your father happened. Her stomach twisted. I'm so sorry. Noah exhaled sharply. It's not your fault, Izzy. I knew this was coming. Her hands trembled as she touched his bruised fingers. We need to leave. Now. He frowned. Viv. She met his gaze. He won't stop, Noah. As long as you're here, he'll keep coming after you. But if we disappear together, he won't have control anymore. Noah studied her for a long moment. Then, despite everything, he smiled. You're serious? She nodded. Completely. A new light sparked in his eyes, hope. Then he reached for her hand and squeezed it. Let's do it. Noah's grip tightened around Isabella's hand as they hurried out of his wrecked apartment. Every second felt stolen, every step a risk. Isabella's father had made it clear he wasn't just trying to separate them. He was erasing Noah's future, piece by piece. But she wasn't going to let that happen. We need to get somewhere safe, she said, unlocking her car. Noah hesitated before getting in. Izzy, if we run, your father will never forgive you. She swallowed hard, turning to face him. I don't care. What kind of life would I have if I let him control me? If I let him destroy the person I love? For a moment, Noah just looked at her. Then, he nodded. Let's go. She started the engine, her heart pounding as she pulled onto the road. But before they could get far, flashing blue and red lights filled the rearview mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. A police car. Noah stiffened. You don't think, but they both knew. Victor Kingsley had pulled another string. Nowhere to run, a uniformed officer approached the window, his expression unreadable. Isabella rolled it down, trying to keep her voice steady. Is something wrong, officer? He glanced at Noah. Mr. Carter, please step out of the vehicle. Noah frowned. Why? The officer pulled out a folded paper. There's a report of trespassing and property damage under your name. We need to bring you in for questioning. Isabella's stomach turned. That's ridiculous. He didn't. Noah gently squeezed her hand. It's okay. No, it's not, she snapped. She turned back to the officer. This is a setup, and you know it. The officer's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. Please step out of the vehicle, Mr. Carter. Noah exhaled sharply, then opened the door. He turned to Isabella with a small smile. I'll be okay. Tears burned her eyes. No, you won't. Not if my father gets his way. As the officer led him away, something inside Isabella snapped. She couldn't run anymore. She had to fight. The power of truth and idea hit her like lightning. She threw open her phone, scrolled to her father's last voice recording, the one where he admitted to making sure Noah had no options left. Then, with a deep breath, she hit upload. The truth was about to come out. And this time, even Victor Kingsley couldn't stop it. The moment Isabella pressed upload, her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She had just declared war on her father. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with notifications. Messages poured in, news outlets picked up the audio, and social media exploded. Billionaire exposed for destroying students' life, the headlines were brutal. But none of it mattered if Noah was still sitting in a jail cell, framed for a crime he didn't commit. She gripped the steering wheel, forcing herself to focus. Think, Izzy. What's the next move? Then it hit her. There was only one person powerful enough to stand against her father. Her mother. A mother's power. Isabella hadn't spoken to her mother, Olivia Kingsley, in weeks. Ever since the divorce, Olivia had distanced herself from her ex-husband's world. But that didn't mean she was powerless. Taking a deep breath, Isabella dialed her number. Isabella, her mother answered, surprise in her voice. Mom, I need your help. It's Noah. Dad had him arrested. Silence. Then, a slow inhale. Tell me everything, Olivia said. Isabella spilled it all, the threats, the sabotage, the fake charges. By the time she finished, Olivia's voice had lost all warmth. "I'll take care of it." Isabella had never heard her mother sound so resolute. Just as is served the next morning, the world woke up to a different reality. Olivia Kingsley, a respected philanthropist, held a press conference. With cameras flashing, she publicly denounced her ex-husband's actions, calling them a disgraceful abuse of power. Victor Kingsley had ruled through intimidation for years. But even he couldn't fight public outrage. Under immense pressure, the charges against Noah were dropped. That afternoon, Isabella stood outside the police station, her heart racing as Noah stepped out, rubbing his wrist where the cuffs had been. The moment their eyes met, she ran to him. He caught her in his arms, holding her so tightly it felt like he never wanted to let go. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You saved me," he murmured. "You saved both of us." Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from hope. The downfall of Victor Kingsley's empire didn't crumble overnight, but cracks had begun to form. With the public against him and his ex-wife calling for accountability, board members of his company forced him to step down. For the first time in his life, Victor Kingsley lost. He tried to contact Isabella, but she didn't return his calls. For the first time, she was truly free. A new beginning. Weeks later, Isabella and Noah sat at their favorite cafe, watching the sun set over the city. "So," Noah said, nudging her playfully. "What now?" She smiled, lacing her fingers with his. "Now. We build our own future, one where no one controls us." Noah grinned. "I like the sound of that." They had fought for their love. And against all odds, they had won. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. Without her father's control looming over her, Isabella finally felt like she could breathe. Victor Kingsley had vanished from the public eye, retreating into silence after being forced out of his own company. Some speculated he had moved abroad, but Isabella didn't care. For the first time in her life, she wasn't living in his shadow. She had something far more valuable, her own path. Love without chains. Noah, too, was free in a way he never imagined. His scholarship had been reinstated, thanks to public outcry, and he was now more determined than ever to prove himself, not to the world, but to himself. "I'm going to build something," he told Isabella one evening as they walked through the city park. "Not just for us, but for kids like me, kids who never had a fair chance." She looked at him, pride swelling in her chest. "You will. And I'll be right beside you." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "I love you, Izzy." She had heard those words before, but now, they carried a different weight, one that felt unbreakable. A message to the world. Isabella didn't just walk away from her father's influence, she reclaimed her own voice. She started a foundation in her mother's name, dedicated to helping students from low-income backgrounds access education without fear of powerful men like Victor Kingsley tearing down their dreams. And with every speech, every interview, she reminded the world, power doesn't come from money. It comes from the courage to stand for what's right. A future of their own making. 1 year later, Noah and Isabella stood on the rooftop of their new apartment, watching the city lights flicker like tiny stars. No more secrets. No more fear. Just them, two souls who had fought for their love and won. Noah pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Do you regret any of it?" He smiled, leaning into him. "Not for a second. Because in the end, love wasn't about where you came from. It was about who you were willing to fight for." And she had found someone worth fighting for, no matter the cost.